Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to our Ritual Night Talk for February 8th, 2022. I'm Scott Stenwick, your host for these Ritual Night events, presented under the auspices of Leaping Laughter OTO in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tonight, I am going to be presenting on the Elevenfold seal, which is a ritual. It's actually part of another ritual, but because of how I use it, I think that it merits its own video. So there isn't actually really a text out there besides the ritual it comes from, Liber Vivo Reguli, that goes through the Elevenfold seal. But it is very interesting considered on its own for a number of reasons. So with that in mind, I've included the donation link tonight. I don't really have a separate article that I've written up on the Elevenfold seal, so we're just going to talk about it here. But, feel free to donate. No donation is too small. All donations go to support the operation of Leaping Laughter OTO in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Also, like, subscribe, request notifications. That way you'll always know when we go live or upload a video here on the Leaping Laughter YouTube channel. So, the Elevenfold seal is, in effect, kind of like the Kabbalistic cross to Liber Vivo Reguli, which is a much more complex and elaborate ritual of the pentagram than the lesser ritual of the pentagram, and also more complex than the star ruby. So it is, in effect, actually sort of like a greater ritual of the pentagram for Malkut. You're calling on the four elements to four directions, but there are some various differences and oddities and additional steps in it, and it does merit its own video, and I will be doing that at some point. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer back to this video with reference specifically to the Elevenfold seal, which is both the beginning and the end of Liber Vivo Reguli. And the reason that I like to consider it on its own, because that's actually how I use it. In my own practice, I use a slightly modified version of it with a few additional pieces, kind of like a middle pillar. And what I like about that is that it actually works with the Thelemic god names as opposed to the more generic Kabbalistic god names. You're calling on Nuit, Hadit, Rakor, Kuit in the Thelemic pantheon when you're energizing the different points of the body. And also, it relates more clearly back to the chakra structure than the middle pillar does. The middle pillar is based on the subtle anatomy of Adam Kadmon, which is the body mapped onto the tree of life. Whereas the Elevenfold seal actually does reference the chakras and works down the body. Now, it's kind of an interesting thing. There was a discussion that I saw online a while ago about when was the first time chakras were mentioned in the West. And I'm not sure when that actually was, because in the late 1800s, there was a lot of interest in Eastern mysticism and Eastern systems that started to come over into Victorian England and into Europe. And so it's kind of hard to place exactly where those come from. Nowadays, you go to like a new age anything. Like, oh, are your chakras this or that? It's like everybody talks about it. The whole chakra concept has been firmly rooted into new age ideas about alternative spirituality, and you see it everywhere. So, but back then, it was a more obscure thing. And there is an interesting article that was written by Theodore Royce, who was one of the founders of the OTO, along with Karl Kellner, from like the early 1900s. I think it was maybe 1901. It was prior to Crowley's involvement with OTO, where there's a paper that he talks about where he's talking about what the chakras are, and then beyond that, he relates the chakras to the path of the vagus nerve, which is really interesting, given that this is something that people are discovering now in neuroscience, that if you teach somebody mindfulness meditation, what happens is you do it for like about 6 weeks. Do it daily. I think the protocol is like 10 or 20 minutes a day is what they've done experiments on. And what they found is there's this thing called the relaxation response that's mediated in the body. It can help bring down inflammation, calm anxiety and stuff like this. And the vagus nerve seems to be significant in that process. So here we've got something that Theodore Royce was writing about, in the early 1900s, when, medical science had not caught up to this at all. And now, finally, we're doing some research, in the 21st century, over 100 years later, actually not quite 100 years, because a lot of this research started in the mid-1990s. But, almost 100 years later, this started up. And now, what we're seeing with mindfulness meditation in the 21st century, it's like, well, actually, Royce was onto something. And, it's very possible that some of that had to do with some of the secrets of OTO back then, because that wasn't information that was readily available. And this idea of the chakra system, being integrated into the OTO system, along with Western ceremonial magic, is probably where the Orientalists of the East comes from in Ordo Templi Orientis. So you've got like the Templar Western mysteries, and then also some of the mysteries of the East incorporated there, involving things like energy and body meridians and chakras and so forth. And so it's interesting to see that the 11-fold seal actually does reference these, in the script of how you work it, and it relates the bodily points to the chakras, which obviously you don't really see in the middle pillar, because the middle pillar, you're going down the middle pillar of the tree of life. And there's some other stuff in there that I've kind of adapted in a middle pillar-ish direction that I'll get to. But it's interesting how it all kind of gets fitted together. So Crowley wrote this ritual in the 1920s, probably. There are a couple of versions of it in different versions of Liber Vivo Reguli, but they're around like the early 20s. So you're thinking like kind of around like the Kefalo period when he was in Italy was probably around the time he finalized it. But there are a couple of earlier versions too, and you can actually find some of those online, which that's something that I'll cover in the Liber Vivo Reguli video. But the 11-fold seal does change in some of those documents as well. So Crowley at that time, was involved in the OTO, and so he would have developed probably some more interest in some of these chakra-based ideas that were in OTO, and so you could see it integrated into the 11-fold seal. Also important to note, since the 11-fold seal actually dates to the early 20s, it precedes Regardie's middle pillar ritual. It's actually an older ritual that does something, in my opinion, kind of similar to the Regardie middle pillar, and possibly inspired it, though I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm not sure how widely published some of this material was and what of it Regardie had access to. Regardie writes in his diaries that Crowley didn't really teach him much magic while he was working as Crowley's secretary, but we don't know, what papers he might have come across or whatnot at that time. And I also don't know if there's a connection at all. It's kind of interesting that you're seeing that there are some parallels between these two practices. And so to run through how this ritual works. So you start off with a series of knocks, and it's 1, 3, 3, 3, 1. So it's a total of 11 knocks. And I clap my hands for the knocks because over the years I've experimented with bells and knockers and all this kind of stuff. And really it's just awkward. It's far less awkward to clap your hands for the battery at the beginning of the ritual and also at the end where you have the 3, 5, 3, which I'll get to. So you start it out like this. You don't necessarily need to flip your hands back and forth like that. That's something I picked up from Masonry, and I think it's kind of neat, but not required in the ritual. However you want to make the battery 1, 3, 3, 3, 1. Then, the next step is you take your thumb between your index and medius, so it's a gesture called the fig. You see it in the Gnostic Mass as a stand-in for the priest holding the lance. In ancient Roman times, this was also a gesture to ward off the evil eye. Basically, it represents the active principle. And so what you're doing is this is like active spirit is what you're doing here. And so you do a circle around your head. 2 ways to do this. You could do it horizontally, like this, or you could do it vertically, like this. I did it horizontally for years and years and years. But then I went out to California and I saw some folks doing it out there, and it kind of actually made sense because in the 11-fold seal, there's a shape that you're drawing over your body. Okay, and that shape is circle at the top, and then and like this. and then line down the center, and then 3 bars across, shortest, middle, longest. And so if you're tracing it like this, you really are tracing that shape over the body. I've also experimented with starting at the throat and going around. That doesn't really feel right though. So I start at the top of the head, go around like this. So I'm specifically alluding to the Sahasrara, the crown chakra here when I do this. And you're going to do that, and you're going to vibrate the name Nuit. So Nuit is the thelemic goddess of infinite space. So this is like all potentiality is Nuit. Nuit. And then you are going to take the same fig gesture, and you're going to touch the Muladhara chakra, which is actually your perineum, so it's pretty far down. And so with that, you vibrate Hadit. Hadit. And so Hadit is the representation of each point within infinite space. So Nuit is infinitely expanded, Hadit is infinitely contracted. And so by going from the Sahasrara to the Muladhara, you set up that kind of dynamic on your body. Okay? Then you come back up the center line, and you touch the Anahata chakra here, and you vibrate Rahur Kuwait, who is the third of the thelemic trinity of deities, the crowned and conquering child. So Rahur Kuwait. Okay, so that's the first section of it there. So you're going to your circle Kuwait, perineum with Hadit, Anahata with Rahur Kuwait. Then you're going to go down the front of your body. So you're going to touch the forehead, mouth, and throat. And according to the way the ritual is written, you then vibrate Aiwaz. Aiwaz is kind of a controversial name in Thelema among some folks like me who maybe, I don't know, we may be out of the majority. But so Aiwaz in the Book of the Law claimed that he is the minister of Hurpar Krat. And in that context, Aiwaz is treated as a thelemic deity. However, Aiwaz was also revealed later to be Crowley's holy guardian angel. So personally, I have always been a little on the fence about vibrating somebody else's holy guardian angel name. And not that I think it's necessarily wrong. It's something that I've always been a little uncomfortable with, so I don't do it that way. So what I do is I do my own holy guardian angel name, which I don't do publicly on videos. But so I will you touch Ajna, throat, and Vishuddha. And then you go across, and then you vibrate the name. So Aiwas, or your holy guardian angel name, or possibly some other name like Crowley also used Adonai. There may be some other like fill-in kind of names that could be used here. And then you go across like this. And so what you're doing is, so here you're coming down the chakras. Ajna, mouth isn't actually a chakra, but Vishuddha. So this is the logos. This is the throat chakra, and so it's a speech in the center of that. You don't actually touch the Sahasrara because you've already done it. And then the horizontal line that you're doing here that's the first of those bars at the top of that figure. So circle, bar. Okay, and so for this one, you go from right to left. Might look like reversed on the camera, but this is my right hand going right to left. So then the next thing you do is you touch the Anahata chakra and the Muladhara, and the Manipura chakra, sorry, not the Muladhara, that's at the end, the Manipura chakra, and you vibrate Therion. So Therion, and you do another horizontal bar across the other direction. So you're starting on the left and you're going right. So it's like a zigzag. So it goes like this and then like this. And then finally, you touch the Svadhisthana chakra and the Muladhara chakra, and you vibrate Babylon. Babylon. And then down at the level of your genitals, you go across the body again, but it's another zigzag. So this one is from right to left again. And so at that point, what you've done is that has created this symbol of the 11-fold seal, which is a circle with the bar and the lines across. And you've activated your chakras going down your body as you've done that. So now, the next part after this involves a vibration of 5 formulas. And this is a place where, and those formulas are Lashtal, Thelema, Uyau, Agape, and Aum. Okay, and it just says you clasp hands and you vibrate those the 5 formula words. Now, what I do here is this is my first modification of this to move it a little bit of a middle pillar direction. So when I vibrate Lashtal, I think of like a sphere of white brilliance up here, kind of like with Ehaye in the middle pillar. Thelema, I map to the throat. This is bright lavender, again, like how I teach the middle pillar. And then Uyao is the center of the chest, bright yellow gold, so Tiferet. Agape is deep purple, so Yesod down here at the Svadhisthana. And then finally, I visualize black going from the Muladhara, perineum down to the feet. So you can think of it as like 5 billiard balls stacked on top of each other. They're spherical. They emanate out from your body. And so each word should be a full and complete vibration with a full and complete breath. And you combine it with that visual. So each visualization comes on as you vibrate each of the words. One of the points about Uyao is that it's kind of interesting because when you read the text, it actually uses an F. So it uses an F or a V, okay? And what those are is there is a note with that same formula in Liber Samic that those represent the Greek letter digamma. And so basically what it does, it takes Iao and it geometrically adds on to it with the 2 extra letters to map it to 93. And so it's pronounced Uyao. Okay, it's not Viaov or Fiaov. If you hear somebody vibrate it that way, they've been reading it out of a book and they probably never really dug deeply into studying this ritual. And the digamma can be a very short vocalization, where it just makes a little bit of a sound before the EO are the primary vowels that are vibrated for that Tiferet level vibration. So once you've done that, the wrap up to the ritual is then the final series of knocks. But I modify this ritual by putting a few other things in here. So once you've vibrated the 5 formula words with the visualizations, you can add in circulating the light. So you can do just like in the middle pillar, you can do the fountain. And the orbit. And if you want to do some of the more elaborate ones, like the side-to-side vibration, circulation of the light, there's like a couple of spiral versions that are in some sources and stuff. Personally, I like the simpler. I do the orbit and I do the fountain. And then finally, what I do with this is, since this is actually where part of the invocation for my daily practice, where I'm calling in these God forms, what I'll do is I'll do the circulation, and then I'll set an intent. And that intent is usually some variation of the benediction from the Gnostic Mass, which is, bring me to the accomplishment of the great work, the summum bonum, true wisdom, and perfect happiness is how I kind of paraphrase it. But that's basically, but the reason that you do that is, okay, so you've opened your operant field. So you've done your star ruby, star sapphire, you've done your lesser pentagram, lesser hexagram. So you've created a space for your daily practice into which magic operates more cleanly and efficiently. You are calling in the powers of the various Thalibic deities using this, just like you call in the powers of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life God names in the Middle Pillar ritual. And you're using that to fortify your body of light and so forth. But the other thing is that by supplying a kind of vector to it, if you will, a statement of intent, that is a general thing that works well day in, day out, what's going to happen is that operant field is going to take your magic and it's going to help accelerate that process. And so it's good to have some kind of an intent. And it's good to formulate it here, particularly given the final step. Now, the final step is you knock 353, and you say, cry, intone abrahadabra. I usually intone it when I do it. And abrahadabra is a word that one of the meanings of it is I speak as I create. So not only have you given an intent in the context of your 11-fold seal ritual, what you've done is you are now putting that intent out there, and then you're declaring I speak as I create. So that sets a real vector of motion for what is happening in the context of your daily work. So, and again, I clap, and the reason I clap, there's a lot of people I've seen tried to do this. I tried to do it this way for a long time. You're like knocking as you're crying abrahadabra, and it winds up being awful. Or well, maybe not awful, but awkward. It's not smooth and flowing like you want your practice to be. And so how I do it is I clap, and I do it like this. Abrahadabra. Okay? And that's it. And so that completes the ritual. I hope that didn't do anything weird on the microphone. But anyway, the point is that clapping is much more elegant than knocking a bell, like striking a battery with a dagger or something like that. And from the standpoint of daily practice, it really helps keep you, in the flow of things without having to fiddle around with any extra stuff that you're trying to work with. So the 3-5-3, okay, again, you have 11 knocks. 11 is the number of magic. So the first one is 1, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 1. And the last one is 3, 5, 3. And so what you have there is, 1 and 3, okay, that is Kether, and that is Bina on the Tree of Life. So we're up at the supernals, and we're doing 1s and 3s, okay? You do have the 3 groups of 3, which maybe reflects down into Yesod, but it's primarily up in the supernals. Then you do 3-5-3, though, and what that does is the 3 is Bina, the 5 is Gebirah, and then the final 3 actually can add with the other 3, which makes it 6, 5, and then the 6 can be related down to Tifereth because you got 2 3s, which sum to 6, as opposed to 3 3s, which sum to 9. So you have that. So there's this supernal, lunar, and then this kind of crossing the abyss, and then into Tifereth, solar, in the context of sacred geometry, and so I think that's a symbolism. I'm not 100% sure, but that's how I generally parse that portion of the ritual. Now, and so in the context then of your daily practice, you finish your 11-fold seal, and then you would just close with the Kabbalistic cross. And that would be the version of the Kabbalistic cross that you opened with. So if you did this with the lesser ritual, the pentagram, it would be the regular Atam, Malkut, Kabbalistic cross. And if you opened with the star ruby, it would be the Soy, Ophale, and so forth, Kabbalistic cross from the star ruby. And then finally, at the very end, if you do the star ruby one, what you do is you can go ahead and add that Apopantos Kakodaimenos at the very end of it. And visualize, which means, basically get behind me, evil spirits. And I mean, evil in the thelemic context is that which impedes your will. So what you're doing is you're casting aside impediments to accomplishing your will, which you declared in your 11-fold seal. What I want is the accomplishment to the great work, the summum bonum, true wisdom, and perfect happiness. And that's what you're setting in motion with your daily work. The other thing that you can do is, following the 11-fold seal, just like with the middle pillar, you can insert additional practices between that closing Kabbalistic cross and the 11-fold seal. So if you went to the point where you wanted to do something like the greater invoking ritual, the pentagram for Malkut, it would go there. If you wanted to do your meditation session, like say 20 minutes of mindfulness meditation, it would go there, and then you would finish that up with the Kabbalistic cross, and so forth. The stuff basically fits into the sequence. The other thing is the 11-fold seal works just fine with lesser pentagram, lesser hexagram, or star ruby, star sapphire, in the context of a general opening for magical operations, like I talked about with the template. So you go up through your 11-fold seal. Your 11-fold seal, that acts like your preliminary invocation, And from there, you can go into tuning the space, standing energy you want to work with, then conjuration, charge, license to depart, and then, finally, closing down the ritual either with the Kabbalistic cross, if you're trying to hold on to that energy that you created, or by repeating the pentagram banishing, either the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, or the star ruby at the end of your operation. And so that basically is an overview of how you use the 11-fold seal, kind of like the way you use the middle pillar. Personally, I do like it better on Methelamite. I like working with the thelemic deity names. And for that reason, it's just generally kind of what I've done as my daily practice. So I think that pretty much covers the 11-fold seal. It's a little bit of a shorter video, but then what we're going to be able to do is the Liber Vivo Reguli video is going to be able to be shorter than this because I won't have to spend the time going through the 11-fold seal, which really does kind of merit some analysis on its own. And so with that, I'm going to be signing off here for the evening. Again, remember, donation link, no donation is too small. Remember to like, subscribe, request notifications so you always know when we post a video or go live here on the Leaping Laughter YouTube channel. And beyond that, thank you all very much for watching, and here's wishing you a great rest of the evening. Love is the law, love endure well.